The property tax is due. That was the entire message from my father. No hello, no question about whether I was all right, not even the fake warmth he usually added before asking me to pay for something. I stared at those 5 words from my desk at the hospital, surrounded by payroll reports and blinking spreadsheets. 3 weeks had passed since I stopped covering my parents' expenses. 3 weeks since I canceled the automatic transfers for their electricity, insurance, phone plan, utilities, and household costs. Before that, nearly $1,800 left my account every month to maintain a house I did not live in. A house I had just learned would never belong to me. My father clearly believed the silence had lasted long enough. The tax deadline was approaching, and the daughter he had treated like an unpaid financial department was expected to return to work. I opened the message box and began typing. But before I sent my reply, I thought about the dinner where everything changed. My parents had invited my sister Sabrina and me over on a Sunday evening. The table was set with Marion's good plates, and my father waited until dessert before placing a folder beside his coffee. "We updated our estate plan," he announced. Sabrina looked down at her plate. My mother folded her hands as though they had rehearsed what came next. "The house, our savings, the investments, the cars, and the personal property will all go to Sabrina," Dad said. "It makes the most sense." I waited for him to explain what would come to me. He never did. Mom touched my wrist. "You're independent, Nadine. Sabrina has children. She needs security." "And the bills?" I asked. Dad frowned. "What about them?" "The utilities, insurance, phone plan, repairs, all the things I pay." He leaned back. "Those arrangements don't need to change. You're the responsible one." Sabrina said nothing. Everyone at the table behaved, as though leaving me nothing while taking nearly half my salary was a reasonable family decision. I did not shout. I did not beg them to reconsider. I went home, opened my banking app, and canceled every payment connected to their household. Now, 3 weeks later, my father wanted the property tax paid. I typed one short sentence, placed my thumb over the send button, and wondered whether he understood that the daughter he had excluded from his future was about to stop financing it. The night my parents announced the will, my father spoke as though he were explaining a routine household decision. "Sabrina has 2 children," he said. "You don't. She needs the house more." I looked across the table at my sister. She kept cutting her pie into smaller pieces without taking a bite. "So everything goes to her?" I asked. "The house, savings, investments, vehicles, and personal property," Dad replied. "Yes." Mom reached for my hand. "You should be proud, Nadine. You've helped us keep everything stable." I pulled my hand away. "For almost 10 years, I've paid your electricity, insurance, phone plan, repairs, and tax shortfalls. What exactly did all of that mean?" Dad's expression hardened. "It meant you were being a good daughter." There it was, not an investment, not shared responsibility, just obedience dressed up as love. I remembered every promise they had made when I hesitated over another payment. "This house will always be yours too. You're investing in the family. Everything will work itself out." Now those words had vanished. Sabrina finally looked at me. "I didn't make the decision." "But you knew," I said. She hesitated long enough to answer me. Dad pushed his chair back. "We're not turning this into a scene." I stood, thanked my mother for dinner, and left before they could accuse me of being dramatic. At home, I opened my banking app. The list was longer than I expected. Electricity, water, homeowners insurance, mobile phones, internet, streaming services, and a monthly transfer for unexpected expenses. One by one, I canceled them. The final confirmation appeared at 10:43 p.m. Payment discontinued. Seconds later, my phone lit up with a voicemail notification from Mom. Her voice was soft and confused. "Sweetheart, did something happen to the electric bill?" 2 weeks later, my parents had already rewritten the story. According to them, I hadn't stopped paying bills because they had cut me out of their estate. I had abandoned the family. The rumor spread quickly enough that my aunt invited everyone to her annual backyard barbecue, insisting it would be a good opportunity to work things out. The moment I arrived, I knew I had walked into an intervention. Conversations stopped. People looked at me with the same disappointed expression. My father stood beside the grill, shaking his head as relatives gathered around him. "I don't understand her anymore," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "After everything we've done for Nadine, she suddenly decided to punish us over money." Several heads nodded. My cousin Emily crossed her arms. "Nadine, they're your parents. You can't just stop helping them." Before I answered, my mother sighed dramatically. "We've never asked for much." I looked from one face to another. Not one of them knew the full story. I took a slow breath. "Can I ask everyone one question?" The yard became quiet. I looked directly at my father. "Who inherits the house all of you expect me to keep paying for?" Silence. Several relatives exchanged confused looks. "What do you mean?" my Uncle David asked. "My parents updated their estate," I replied calmly. "Everything goes to Sabrina, the house, their savings, their investments, every remaining asset." Emily frowned. "Wait, I thought you and Sabrina were splitting everything." "So did I." Every eye turned toward Sabrina. She shifted uncomfortably before speaking. "I've always known Mom and Dad plan to leave everything to me." The sentence landed harder than anyone expected. "You knew?" Aunt Carol asked. Sabrina lowered her eyes. "I thought Nadine knew too." "No," I answered quietly. "I found out the same night they reminded me I was still expected to keep paying every monthly bill." The atmosphere changed immediately. People stopped looking at me. Instead, they stared at my parents. Dad cleared his throat. "This is family business." "No," Uncle David replied evenly. "The moment you asked one daughter to finance property she would never own, it became everybody's business." Dad's face tightened. "We're leaving." He grabbed Mom's arm and headed toward the driveway before anyone could ask another question. As guests began drifting back toward the tables, Uncle David stopped beside me. He lowered his voice. "Nadine." "Yes." "I think you should keep every bank statement you've ever made." 3 weeks after I canceled every payment, the cracks started showing. The electric company mailed a late notice. The homeowner's insurance premium went unpaid. The internet service was suspended for 2 days before my father reluctantly paid it himself. For the first time in years, every bill landed exactly where it belonged. Not in my inbox. In theirs. Dad still refused to call. Instead, he sent short messages. "The water bill is overdue." "The insurance payment bounced." "The phone company needs payment today." Every text looked like an assignment from a supervisor, not a message from a father. I didn't answer. A few hours later, Mom tried a different approach. "Nadine, your father is under a lot of stress." Then another. "We're family. Families help each other." When neither message worked, the guilt became sharper. "I hope you'll be able to live with yourself if something happens to us." I read every text without replying. Meanwhile, Sabrina remained strangely quiet. I heard through my aunt that she kept telling everyone, "Nadine will come around. She always does." She believed I would fall back into the role I had played for years. She was wrong. One Saturday morning, I pulled an old storage box from the back of my closet. Inside were folders labeled by year. Bank statements, transfer confirmations, canceled checks, insurance receipts, utility invoices. I spread everything across my dining room table. What I expected to take an hour lasted almost the entire weekend. As I added the totals into a spreadsheet, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Every furnace repair, Every plumbing emergency, every insurance increase, every property tax shortage, every unexpected expense somehow became my responsibility. Whenever my parents had come up short, I filled the gap. Not Sabrina. Not anyone else. Me. By Sunday evening, I leaned back in my chair and stared at the final total. I had contributed far more than I had ever allowed myself to calculate. For years, I hadn't simply been helping my parents. I had been preserving the value of the very house they had already decided would belong exclusively to my sister. That realization changed something inside me. The guilt disappeared. A day later, Mom called. "You know, people are starting to talk," she said. "If we lose this house, everyone will blame you." I answered calmly. If the house matters that much, the future owner should help protect it. She hung up without another word. 2 days later, my phone vibrated while I was finishing lunch at work. It was Dad. Just one sentence. "The property tax is due." I opened the conversation, typed my reply, and pressed send. Before I could even lock my phone, it began vibrating nonstop with incoming calls. I watched my phone light up again and again. "Dad. Mom. Dad. Mom." Then Sabrina. I let every call go to voicemail. For years, I had dropped everything the moment one of them needed money. I had interrupted vacations, canceled plans with friends, and even delayed replacing my own aging car because there was always another family emergency. This time, there was only silence on my end. A minute later, my father sent another message. What is that supposed to mean? I looked at the conversation. Above his question was my reply. "Please ask the future owner of the property." It was the shortest message I had ever sent him. It was also the first one that drew a boundary instead of another payment. An hour later, Mom left a voicemail through tears. "You're tearing this family apart, Nadine. Your father can't believe you'd do this over an inheritance." I listened to the entire message before deleting it. Then I opened the folder on my computer containing nearly 10 years of financial records. Every transfer, every utility payment, every insurance premium, every receipt for emergency repairs, every property tax contribution. Alongside them were old text messages. "Can you cover it this month? We'll make it right. This is really an investment in the family home. One day, you'll understand why we're doing things this way." At the time, I believed those promises. Now they read like evidence of a plan that had never included me. I attached a spreadsheet summarizing every contribution I had made over the years and sent it to both of my parents. I added one sentence beneath it. If I was never going to have any ownership in this property, my financial responsibility for it ended the day you made that decision. Neither of them replied that afternoon. Instead, they started calling relatives. Unfortunately for them, the story had already changed. Uncle David had quietly shared my spreadsheet with several family members after asking my permission. My aunt compared the numbers against the dates. She remembered my parents asking for temporary help. The pattern was obvious. While Sabrina received birthday trips, help with a down payment on her first home, and generous gifts for her children, I had been paying to keep our parents' household running. Relatives who had criticized me at the barbecue began calling to apologize. "I didn't know," Aunt Carol admitted. "Your parents made it sound like you stopped helping for no reason." "They left out the most important part," I replied. "They left out all of it." My father eventually called one last time. His voice was calmer than I expected. "You embarrassed us." I answered quietly. "No, Dad. I stopped protecting a story that embarrassed me." He didn't have an answer. Within months, the financial strain became impossible to ignore. Without my monthly contributions, maintaining the house cost far more than my parents wanted to admit. Sabrina had inherited the promise of the property, But she quickly discovered that ownership came with bills she had never planned to pay. The conversations changed. Instead of asking why I had stopped helping, relatives began asking why Sabrina wasn't contributing more. The burden finally shifted to the people who expected to benefit from it. About a year later, I signed papers on a modest townhouse. It wasn't large. It wasn't impressive. But every payment I made built something that actually belonged to me. For the first time in my adult life, my paycheck wasn't disappearing into someone else's future. Eventually, my parents sold the family home. They could no longer comfortably afford the taxes, insurance, maintenance, and repairs without the financial support they had quietly relied on for years. We still speak occasionally. Birthdays, major holidays, brief phone calls. The conversations are polite because they are honest. No one asks me to pay another bill. No one tells me that sacrificing myself is proof of love. I finally learned that love offered with conditions is simply another form of control. When my father texted, "The property tax is due," he expected another payment. Instead, it became the moment I finally stopped financing a future that was never meant to include me.